Well, it's already that time of the week again. Time for a brand new edition of Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. We're also streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We're also a co-production of Radio Maria, so welcome back to our Radio Maria listeners. Hope you're ready for a brand new edition of Faith and Sport coming at you, because it's coming at you right now. I'm Chris, the producer of the show, and you know him, the host of Faith and Sport each week, the one, the only, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Okay, the little audience, they hesitated there. Folks, Welcome to the show, however, wherever you're listening to us. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science at nearby Wingate University each and every week. The crowds, they're pretty raucous today, Chris.
They're ready for Faith and Sport.
You know what I credit it to? Caffeine.
Yeah.
If you just give them a little caffeine and a donut, everybody gets really happy and they get excited. Folks, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to discuss all things sports, including our hit and or miss of the week with Carlos Herrera. He's going to join us from the Washington, D.C. area. Carlos is a certified youth soccer coach. He's also a former youth minister, faithful guy, and sport lover like me, longtime friend of mine, and just about each and every week he joins us for this conversation. We're going to do weekend headlines after the break. Our guest today is athletic. Sorry about that. Our guest today is Tim Singleton. He's a certified athletic trainer, director of sports medicine at Wingate University. If that university sounds familiar, I just mentioned it. That's where I teach. We're going to do the quick Q&A with Dr. A and Chris. Today we're going to do a special thing, a crazy stat or just COVID. Right, it's the first time we're doing that. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Oh, yeah, as always, it's going to be interesting. Brother, how was your weekend?
Had a pretty good weekend. Had a great game Saturday between NC State and Wake Forest, and the Wolfpack came out with a win, 80-62 over Wake Forest, so I was really proud of them.
Awesome.
They're going to move on, and on the 24th, they're going to be playing the University of Virginia, so hopefully they get another win there.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, right, because they're in the top 10.
And got to watch an awesome race yesterday in Darlington. The NASCAR boys were in Darlington again for another week of racing down there, this time at the road course for some road racing.
That's right, it was dirt for the first time since 1970.
Well,
right?
Actually,
was that the weekend?
Well, actually, it wasn't dirt yet. They don't race on the dirt until they go to Bristol. But they did a road course yesterday in Daytona.
What's a road course mean? I thought we were talking about this last week, that they were going to be on dirt for the first time since 1970.
Yeah, I was thinking that this past Sunday's race was going to be on dirt, but that was a mistake. Actually, the first dirt's going to be on the Bristol race there, the Bristol race.
So, in essence, we didn't make a mistake because I went right to the website and it said this week.
Yeah, that's what I read, too.
There you go. Yeah, so they posted something that was errant. But either way, you had a good week. Did you see Michigan's game yesterday?
No, I didn't get to see that.
They're number 3, right?
Yeah,
and they
but
played
I know you did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They played number 4, Ohio State, and great game. I had to go to my daughter's softball practice, and there was 4 minutes and 50 seconds left. And she's like, Daddy, we got to go. And I'm, of course, standing up looking at the TV going, there's only 4 minutes left, honey. And I had to walk out the door. I didn't find out later that they won by like 4 points. Great game. Solidified that they're a top 5 team. I think, to tell the truth, I think I'm not the only one to think this. I think a lot of people think those are the two of the best teams in America. It was a great game. Anyway, Michigan's for real. I'm looking forward to the tournament coming up. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too. My only letdown of the weekend was that I thought that it was looking really good that Chase Elliott was going to win the race yesterday, but unfortunately he was spun out, and that just put him in a 20. I think it was 21st is where he came in.
Who's the name of the guy who won the race yesterday?
Christopher Bell.
I saw a picture of him. He looks like he's 13 years old.
Yeah, I know.
He just has that baby face, and I'm like, that's the kid who won? Yeah. Anyway, like last week, it was the first time he's ever won, right? And the
right.
big, with the big guys. Well, good for him.
He was really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for you, brother. All right, listen, let's do this. Let's do our hit and miss with Carlos Herrera. Let's bring him on right now. Carlitos, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you for having me back, Dr. Acquaviva.
Everything's been good with you, buddy?
Everything's been great. Sorry I wasn't able to make the show last week. My little boy got a little foot injury, his first one that sent him to the emergency room, and he happens to be great. He's so tiny.
Yeah.
But I figured it's going to be the first of many opportunities to go to the emergency room for injuries.
No, don't say that, brother. But I'm sorry you had to do that. I'm sorry you had to miss. I was looking forward to last week's show. Ed filled in for you. He called in. We had a good conversation. The show went all right, so Nothing was hurt. I'm glad your son has started to heal. So let's get into this. For anybody joining us for the first time, what Carlos and I do just about every time, in fact, we do this every time he's on, and whether it's Carlos and I or Ed and I, we talk about something that was really good in the world of sport or something that kind of made the world of sport take a step back, either something that an organization did or somebody did, and we call it our hit or miss of the week. As always, Carlos, do you have a hit or miss, brother?
Yes, I do. I have it's a hit, and it's a hit from the perspective of an adult and how he responds to somebody, particularly a youngster, that is heckling him.
Yeah, so what happened? Give us the background on the story.
So the background on the story is Cam Newton, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard. Cam Newton, who is a active professional football player and still employed by the New England Patriots.
That's right.
As I think the second-string quarterback for them. He has a foundation that sponsors several football teams on 7-on-7 tournaments.
Yeah.
It's no pads, it's kids playing. And he had a tournament this past weekend in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And he does several of these over the year. And he happened to be, with his team of youngsters, and one of the participants, a young high schooler, basically started talking to him and kind of, I don't know if he taunting him, but it was kind of taunting him about being poor and how he was going to be let go as a free agent and that he was going to be poor because he was going to be unemployed, which is what people think with the New England Patriots because his contract's a lot of money.
That's right.
And so they got into an exchange with Cam Newton, this little high schooler, and it's all over online in the multimedia. You can see it. You can see kind of the conversation. And Cam Newton kind of started engaging with him as he was, it's a really small group. It was like 3 or 4 feet away. The team that the kid's on, his coach was there listening. The players were listening. The players on the kids' team were listening.
Yep.
Cam is there with the team he's sponsoring behind him, and kind of evolved into this back and forth between the two of them. And I have to hand it to you. The kid was being rather smug. He was kind of taunting Cam.
He was,
and sort of saying also, you should see me. You should see how I play. And Cam was like, "Are you good? Are you a good player? What do you do?" And the kid didn't really want to answer that. He goes, "Just see my YouTube video. You watch YouTube. You should see me play." And basically, several times he called him. Said to him, "You're poor. You're poor," because he was going to be out of a job maybe.
Yeah.
After the New England Patriots, who might release him, but I'm sure he'll pick up a job somewhere else. And not to mention, this kind of goes without saying, but he's made Cam Newton has made $122 million over playing 10 seasons in professional football, and that's just the football salary. It probably doesn't include his sponsorship.
Of course, it never does.
And one of Cam's responses is, "I'm rich."
Yeah.
He goes, "You're poor," and he'd go, "I'm rich." Right? So, and anyway, it kind of escalated, but Cam sort of kept it rather
jovial.
Yeah. He was trying to be funny with it. He also said, he told his team to they started laughing about some response the kid did, and he kind of told him to calm down. He's like, "Look, you talk to me. You're the one creating attention." And he's like, I guess you need some attention. And was sort of saying, "Well, answer my question." He wanted to talk, and he didn't want the kid to be kind of necessarily disparaged. But the kid embarrassed himself. He also called him, I don't know if you could say this online or on the radio, but he called him a proverbial horse's rear end.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, several times.
And so the reason this was good is because it's how he handled it. But further, there was like a hit part 2 in that the kid made a heartfelt apology online, I think via his Twitter account. And you and I both agree that it was a long but yet specific or detailed apology.
I'll read the apology.
Go ahead.
Which was great that the kid read it, but it says, "First and foremost, I want to express my deepest apologies to Cam Newton, my entire organization, and my coaches for my actions at the 7-on-7 tournament this past weekend. I did not intend for it to get as far as it did. First, I would like to start off by saying my parents never taught me to disrespect people. As a football player, I let my competitive side get the best of me, and it was a huge miscommunication. I think that's an interesting comment. It was in the midst of the moment. I realize now how a lot of you took it as disrespect and never meant to humiliate and let anyone down. I'm very appreciative of the 7-7 to even allow me to be a part of the community and allowing me to be a part of the team I'm currently on. I realize this can dictate my future as a young man, having very big dreams, goals, but I will not allow this to stop me from getting where I need to be. So again, I apologize and hope I can be forgiven.
Very good. So there's a couple things to mention about that apology. I thought it was a 9 out of 10, but he clearly mentions why, at least part of the motivation behind the big apology, and that is, I want to get to where I'm going. I don't want to, in today's social media world, something like this could keep him from getting in the university he wants to get in.
Oh, I'm sure, and you and I were talking about this beforehand, and actually, let me interject one comment. When the kids started going back and kind of being disrespectful to Cam actually said, "Where's your dad? Is your dad here? Is your parent here?
Yeah,
let me talk to your." Like, he was so sort of shocked how this kid was behaving. And can you imagine this? I mean, you are a high school student.
That's right.
You are basically making fun of Cam Newton, who sponsors much of this event, who is there with several teams. And, this kid wants to be a successful football player, and he's taunting the wrong, if you want to and there are NFL players, they're all sort of texting in support of Cam going, what kind of disrespectful kids do we have, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So imagine all the pressure that this kid and his parents probably started to get from the coach, the players that play on his own team, going what are you doing?
Oh, yeah. Folks, you're listening to Faith and Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio, a co-production of Radio Maria. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We're in the midst of our hit and miss conversation with Carlos Herrera. Carlos is talking about his hit of the week, which was a high school student that was disapproving and ultimately disrespectful to NFL player Cam Newton at Cam Newton's 7-on-7, which is an invite-only type camp to give notoriety to some of the rising football stars in high school. One of the things, and this is, even today's young player, like Cam Newton he's more like a high schooler in age than he is closer to you and I in age, shows really how old you and I are. But it's interesting that even some of these young players who some of them, these NFL players that were sticking up for Cam Newton, aren't probably yet 30, but that's part of what comes with this, with this perspective as you get older, is holy smokes, why would somebody be in the presence of a great player like Cam Newton? And let me remind the audience again that he's made over $100 million. He was the Heisman Trophy winner, national champion for Auburn, and then he went on to, several years with the Carolina Panthers. And one of those years, he was the MVP, and that same year, he took them to the Super Bowl. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but he had a great year nonetheless. And here's the thing, Carlos. He doesn't believe he's poor. I don't think he really believes that Cam Newton's nothing. But I think in the midst of being, in the area and having the opportunity to talk to Cam Newton, one of the only ways to get his attention was to say something that was egregious or outrageous, right?
I think that's a great point, right? But I think you and I would also, point out, where's the respect? Where's the humility of a young athlete who wants to maybe emulate this Cam Newton, right? He and that's one of the things we talk about in this program, character, humility, not letting the competitive juices become negative, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't even competitive. It was just, he's kind of lost himself there. But as we pointed out, whether he meant it or not, that was a really good apology, even a great apology. And let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he really meant it. Let's switch gears, brother. I want to talk about mine is a hit as well, and mine has to do with another gentleman that's here in the state of North Carolina, and he is Michael Jordan, the former Chicago Bull great, the former UNC great. And he's in the news recently because this makes multiple times that he has given money to open a clinic in his hometown of Wilmington, North Carolina. And he donated $10 million to open up 2 new medical clinics. And the clinics, slated to open in 2022, will serve the uninsured and the underinsured residents of New Hanover County, which is
a part of Wilmington. And I think this is great for obvious reason, and it's kind of condensed into this couple-sentence statement by Michael Jordan, which read, "Everyone should have access to quality health care, no matter where they live or whether or not they have insurance. Wilmington holds a special place in my heart, and it's truly gratifying to be able to give back to the community that supported me throughout my life." By the way, he did this a couple years ago to open up 2 clinics here in Charlotte, and that was a donation of $7 million. Now, granted, nobody in the history of sport has probably made more money, not necessarily in their contract, but in endorsements. My guess is he makes more endorsements as a retired player than virtually everybody else does in any sport currently, and he hasn't played basketball for 20 years. So I will give him credit for 2 reasons. And I'm saying this because a lot of people go, well, look how much money he makes. Yeah, $10 million, $7 million here and there. But the point is, Carlos, he actually did it. In other words, if we found out what percentage of his bank account this was, how many professional players and how many of us as that we are self-proclaimed Christians and that we want to give to charity and make our communities better, how many of us have given that same percent? Let's say it's 0.005%. Have we given that? Would we do the same thing if we had that much money? And the good news is that I think part of Christian behavior is tithing, is giving to the community and projects and things like this that mean something to us, that's close to somebody in our family, whatever the case is. And the other thing, I think this is a great story, is he serves as a role model to other young and older athletes, people who have money. Money is meant to be spent. Yes, we like to look in our bank account and see a lot of zeros behind those numbers. But for those who have more is expected. It's right in Scripture in the New Testament. St. Paul says this, and that is something that we should live by. And I give Michael Jordan credit for those 2 reasons. Your comments, Carlos?
I think it's fantastic. I also think it's helpful and good that somebody is able to get a little bit of notoriety for it or news and it get published, right? We talk about doing things where nobody sees and nobody knows what your scriptural, let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is sometimes it's very helpful for people to understand what other people are doing with their money or level of interest. And in this case, this is really, I think, fantastic that he's doing that. I'm reading here, Michael Jordan is worth, his sort of net worth is $2.2 billion.
Wow.
Right? And in his NBA career, he made $93.7 million as a player. Okay? But he's made almost, I don't know, I think I read this in here, almost $1 billion in revenue related to his endorsement.
It's amazing.
So it's pretty amazing, and he makes a tremendous amount of money. But the fact that he could be giving, I know he has all sorts of charities, foundations. He invests in a lot of different things. But this is great news for the local community, right, of North Carolina, and I think it's an inspiration for all of us, and we should, as you said, look in comparison as to what we give as in relationship to how much we earn. I think it's something to remind us that we should do that. And I think the Scripture says usually 10%. I think the church also, it'd be interesting to see what the Catechism says on that, but that's something that we should aspire to.
Absolutely. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. I think I messed up the word Carolina there. Carolina Catholic Radio, also a co-production of Radio Maria. This is Faith in Sport, where we apply our faith to all aspects of sport. So whether you are an athlete, whether you are a coach, whether you are a parent of an athlete, whether you are a grandparent of an athlete, involved in sport in any way as an administrator, this show is for you because we like to weave in character, morality, and ethics as part of our everyday conversation. So thank you for joining us today. Folks, one of the things I want you to do is pass along the the contents of this show to somebody that may be interested. We're trying to each and every week reach a bigger audience, new people in our audience, and there must be a sports fan in your life. There must be somebody that you know that would like to listen in on the conversation that we have. And so I'm going to encourage you guys to do two things. Pass on the fact that we air one time originally in the beginning of the week, and then we're aired literally every day after that. So go to Carolina Catholic Radio. You can be heard on Radio Maria, as we mentioned, and if you mention this to other people, you can help spread the word. This is joining literally my two loves. This is one of the reasons why Carlos joins me. He's not only a longtime friend, he has passion for the same two things in life as much as anything, and in the case of me, more than anything, I love my faith and I love sport, and I thought this was a great way to combine those things. So whatever's going on in the world of sport, whatever's going on locally, regionally, or even internationally, this is the place that you can hear about it. Please, you can email me through the website. Check out carolinacatholicradio.org, and you can go to my page and you can find out some information more about the show, and then you can email me and let me know the way that the points of conversation that you'd like to hear about. So if there's a coach, if there's something that happened in your community, if there's a parent that you want to bring attention to for the good, please go ahead and do that. Listen, before we move on too much, I want to give a shout out and a piece of gratitude out to this show's sponsor, and he is author Jeff Ballister. He's written the book God Doesn't Play a Zone Defense, and this is a practical game plan for building a one-on-one relationship with God. He talks the language of sport. He's a big sports guy. He played college basketball. His family's involved in basketball, both above him, his father, and then his kids are involved in basketball, and as a result, he's been involved in coaching his kids and so forth. And he just saw this as an opportunity to use the analogy of basketball to help you develop the relationship with God. So check it out at goddoesn'tplayzonedefense.com. You can see a video on Jeff, find out more about why he wrote the book, and a way to purchase this book. So thank you to Jeff for sponsoring this show today. All right, listen, Carlos, brother, I thank you for coming on the show. I think it's great every week, each and every week. You take time to talk to us about your hit and miss in the world of sport. And listen, we're going to have more stuff to talk about next week, so join us then, okay, buddy?
Excited to be on the show as always. Love talking about my faith in sport, and I look forward to being on next week's show.
Okay, buddy, you take care. Lolitos! There you go, Lolitos. Carlos Herrera, he's a certified soccer coach in the Northern Virginia area, and he's also a former youth minister. In fact, that's one of the ways that we met. We met through rugby, and we actually weren't friends on the rugby team, but we were both youth ministers at our local parishes about a year or two later, and we saw each other at this statewide convention or diocesan convention, and literally since then we have been inseparable as friends, and so we've just developed friendship, and we've developed it through the love of the teachings of the church. So there you have it, folks. Carlos Herrera, who joins us just about each and every week. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. This is where we look at sport through a Catholic lens. So whether it's ethics, character, morality, whatever the case is, we like to bring that part into the conversation. So it's really a regular sports show, but what we do is try to weave those things into the conversation, so to kind of go down a different path, and it's different than your regular Fox Sports or ESPN sports programming. Listen, folks, stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to have Tim Singleton on. He's a certified athletic trainer, the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. I'm going to throw some good questions at him. So if you've had an injury, especially as it's related to sport, I'll try to touch on something that you might be interested in. He's going to join us in a couple minutes. But right now, Chris, we have our weekend headlines. So take it away, brother.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
It's time for Weekend Headlines with Dr. John Acquaviva on Faith and Sport.
All right, here we go, folks. Here's some of the headlines that have taken place in the world of sport in the last few days. In the PGA, American Max Homa won the Genesis Open, beating Tony Finau in a playoff. Next up on the tour is the Puerto Rico Open. In tennis, the Australian Open, one of the 4 Grand Slam events, was completed over the weekend, and Novak Djokovic won the men's title, and American Naomi Osaka won on the women's side. In NCAA men's basketball, still only 2 unbeatens, and I say still because since the beginning of the year, these guys have been 1 and 2, and they remain number 1 and 2 because they've yet to be beaten, and that's number 1 Gonzaga and number 2 Baylor. But the big news is who number 3 is, and it had to do with number 3 Michigan playing Ohio State over the weekend. They played a good, close game, but the great thing is this proves that there is a God because the University of Michigan won. I couldn't say that without laughing.
Yeah, he's like, well,
yeah.
let him win one once in a while.
I don't know. I think God looks at the Ohio State uniform and looks at Michigan uniform, and he goes, maize and blue does look a little better than scarlet and gray. I think it's scarlet and gray. Anybody that has gray as one of their major colors, I'm not sure God doesn't frown upon that,
yeah.
But we'll see. Folks, in Major League Baseball, full squads report this week. That's unbelievable to say, and it'll just be another week or so before we see scores. That is, exhibition games begin in just a few days. So there you have it, sports headlines that may or may not change your life.
Oh, and don't forget, John, last but not least,
let's hear it.
The Dixie Vodka 400 is coming up
next week,
and the guys they're going to still be in Florida, but they're for the 3rd week in a row. But they're moving from Daytona to Miami for the Dixie Vodka 400 at the Homestead Miami Speedway.
There you go. Okay, so what are you looking more forward to each year? You probably look more forward to NASCAR starting than, say, Major League Baseball starting. Or being a Braves fan, is it about equal, just different things?
Yeah, about equal. Yep.
Awesome. Now, what do you find more exciting? Let's say the NCAA tournament, including your NC State Wolfpack,
yeah,
or a big race. What would you look more forward to? That's a tough one, it sounds like.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
All right, brother.
I guess maybe a big race.
No, yeah, it depends on the race. It depends on who's doing what and so forth.
Yeah, how exciting it is.
But listen, this is a little tease, this little conversation about basketball in particular, to what we're going to do at the end of the show. The first time we're doing this, a crazy stat or just COVID? So that's it's a new category that I thought up over the weekend. We're going to do it at the end. But listen, folks, stay tuned because just in a minute or two, athletic trainer Tim Singleton's going to join us. He's the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. Stay tuned for that. We're going to do, after that, the quick Q&A with Dr. A. And as I mentioned, a crazy stat or just COVID. So hang with us here on Faith and Sport. Chris, take it away, brother.
You are listening to Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. We've got more Faith and Sport coming your way. Stay tuned. Right after the break, we've got more Faith and Sport coming your way. So stay tuned. All of our Carolina Catholic Radio Network listeners and also our Radio Marie listeners, don't go away. And check out Faith and Sport on demand at carolinacatholicradio.org.
AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.
Looking for that perfect pilgrimage? Consider spending the day in Canton, Ohio at the Museum of Mother Angelica. In 1981, Mother Angelica, a cloistered Franciscan nun, launched what has become the largest religious media network in the world, Eternal World Television Network. EWTN now reaches 264 million homes in 145 countries with AM, FM, shortwave, and internet. Spend morning at the museum, lunch at the renowned That Little Italian Kitchen, and the afternoon at the Rhoda Y Shrine. Refresh, recharge, renew. For all the details, go to carolinacatholicradio.org.
This is Jason Murphy from the Obligation Radio Show here on AM 1270. The 11th Annual Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas is set for Saturday, March 20th at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church in North Charlotte. Speakers include EWTN's own Bear Wozniak, Belmont Abbey College President Dr. Bill Therfelder, Dr. John Acquaviva from Wingate University and host of Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, and my own partner in crime on the Obligation Radio Show and business life coach, John Eads. Mass will be offered by Bishop Peter Jugas and assisted by the seminarians of St. Joseph Seminary. It will be a day of faith and fellowship with talks, Mass, rosary, and lunch. Sign up today at CatholicMenOfTheCarolinas.org and also find us on Facebook and Instagram. Virtual ticket options are also available. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. God bless and Esto Vir.
Carolina Catholic's 40 Days of Giving Lenten Pledge Drive is underway. Now in our third year, Carolina Catholic is providing more ways to learn, love, and live your Catholic faith than ever before. Carolina Catholic has expanded its local lineup with a wide array of new programs each week. You'll hear from outstanding members of our local Catholic community like Gail Buckley Behringer, Dr. John Acquaviva, Jean Whalen and Kathleen Lewis, Lisa Feely, Jason Murphy, John Eads, and Elza Spady. These programs are also available anytime on demand. Carolina Catholic also debuted a 12-hour, 6-platform virtual fall conference with a commitment to continue operating across all 6 media platforms. This includes AM 1270 radio, our website, mobile app, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, YouTube, and direct marketing e-blasts. As a 100% listener-supported 501c3 nonprofit, Carolina Catholic needs your financial support to pay our bills for 2021 and beyond. Please consider making a pledge to donate today. Just click the donate button at carolinacatholicradio.org or our Carolina Catholic mobile app. Thank you for your support to keep great local Carolina Catholic programming available to our community for years to come. May God bless you abundantly.
And we are back for more Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. We're also a co-production of Radio Maria, so welcome back to our Radio Maria listeners as well. I'm Chris, the producer, and once again, here he is, your host, Dr. John Acquaviva.
There you go, folks. Thank you for joining us to the second part of our show, Faith and Sport. This is where we merge sport and virtue, or at least try to in a lot of our conversation. You know, Chris, there was something else I could have mentioned when we were talking about, can anybody hear me over that crowd cheering? It's unbelievable. Actually, in just 1 minute, certified athletic trainer Tim Singleton's going to join us. He's the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. If Wingate University sounds familiar, just about each and every week I remind everybody, that's where I teach exercise science. So Tim and I know each other through some of the same channels there. And after Tim's on, we're going to do the quick Q&A with Dr. A, and then we got a brand new category to cover, a crazy stat or just COVID.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Now, speaking of COVID, listen to this. Ian Desmond, he's an outfielder with the Colorado Rockies, and he was a longtime player with the Washington Nationals. And I just read that he has decided to opt out this year as well. And he was one of the few people that opted out last year. And then he's decided to opt out this year. And I have to admit, Chris, I was a little shocked. I kind of, to a degree, I thought that had kind of left us, right? That was, the vaccines out there. I think people have either gotten more comfortable with the idea that there's a virus out there, or they just become indifferent to it, right?
Right.
I think some people have just changed their mind just because they're tired of wearing a mask and being in their house, whatever the case is. But this is a guy who is going to opt out of his salary again for the second straight year. Now, Granted, he's 35 years old. He's a veteran, and he's got kids at home. And I think, everybody has that spectrum of fear, right, regarding this virus. And my guess is his is at that tail end of it. It's like a 9 or a 10. He doesn't want to bring that back home. But I was still surprised to see somebody do that. Here's a guy on a roster, and as much as anything, I think you can only sit home so much, but I guess that shows where his fear is at, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. But people are still doing that, and he certainly has the right, and this is not a critique of that. I was just surprised to hear that somebody's going to sit out for the second straight year. And at 35, boy, talk about a lot of thumb twiddling, right?
Yeah.
But he probably loves being with his family, and God bless him. And, he's probably making up for lost time because as a baseball player, you're not home very much. And he has a chance to do that. But I never thought I'd hear that after last year. But I think we'll probably hear more. In fact, he might give energy to other people that want to do this. They're like, Ian Desmond did it. He's a good player, and this is what I'm going to do. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going there. And, of course, he could always change his mind. And the story I read, it said something interesting, like this will also give perhaps he did it to give some of the rookies on the roster a chance to actually play. But I can't remember a guy actually quitting because he wanted somebody else to play, right? I mean, that's kind of an odd thing to say or to feel when you're a major league player or just a professional athlete in general. So I thought I'd pass that along. So count that under the weekend headlines, folks.
Yeah.
Ian Desmond has opted out for the second straight year, Major League Baseball. Let's bring him on. Tim Singleton, he's a certified athletic trainer. He's the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. In fact, the first question I'm going to ask him is, what does it mean that he's the director of sports medicine? Tim Singleton, welcome back to the program, buddy.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good. Listen, I got a couple things to ask you, but start us out by, what does that mean to be an athletic trainer, and in particular, the director of sports medicine at a university?
Interesting question. It's kind of the role has kind of grown over the years. So as a professional individual, I'm considered an athletic trainer who works primarily with student athletes, either on a professional level, or athletes at a professional level, or collegiate setting, which is student athletes, Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, you name it, we could do whatever.
Yeah.
And then also the high school setting. But from a director's perspective, I oversee the department and the staff that delivers the health care to our student athletes. Along with that, it's responsible for hiring, firing, budgetary,
sure,
just kind of management, stuff like that. So on top of that, I'm also part of my responsibility is to expand the services provided to our student athletes, to include sports psychology, dietitian, kind of mental health pieces. Like that's what's big on the NCAA's docket right now, along with COVID. So my job is it's more, that part is more obviously, as the title sounds, is more administrative than clinical.
Yeah, and of course it's a good combination of both. Now let me ask you, Tim, what role do the athletic trainers play, in particular, director of sports medicine, in the whole COVID issue? If somebody feels symptoms, do you just simply send them to our health center, or what's your guys' role in that?
I mean, this is an opportunity for me to publicly, to basically give a shout out to Sherry McCaskill and her team at the health center. We have a very robust staff at a health center compared to other schools in our conference. So they have been able to help us out a lot compared to some of my colleagues around the state and around just our conference. But usually a symptomatic person, because we're not only dealing with athletics, we're dealing from a community-wide perspective. We send all symptomatic people to the health center because they have to run what they call a PCR test, which is the more sensitive test versus the antigen. And so they have the capabilities of doing that, so we'll send all symptomatic people to them. We've found as of late that most of our symptomatic people are coming back negative, which is great because what people fail to realize is just because out of just the sheer monstrosity of what COVID is that there are other things out there other than COVID right now, and we can't forget that.
That's right.
And so most of them have come back, but they facilitate all of our symptomatic people. We have a great communication, great line of communication with them. And so we can help facilitate on the athletic side. What does that mean? How does that operate? How can we contact trace out? Which means, can we play? Do we have enough bodies left over to play a game?
And Tim, how many student athletes at Wingate University?
We have right now, I would say, close to 700.
Gosh, that's a lot. And I know this changes from day to day, and maybe even this information doesn't come through your desk specifically, but my guess is it would. And of those 700 in the past year, because we've been dealing with the virus for about a year now, how many, by your estimate, or do you know the exact number of student athletes that have been tested positive for the virus?
Right now, my count that I have is 133.
Wow. So it's about, what would that percentage be? About 15% then, something like that.
Right. So that's spanning all the way from August 14th when we first arrived on campus to this date right here. So I mean, if you're looking at, to me, college campuses are probably operating in the most conservative manner when it comes to COVID-related, responsibility, and as well as how we're following the standards that are out there set by CDC or any other governing body. So, we're 133.
Now, one of the things, Tim, that you do is you deal, right? You trained as an athletic trainer. You got certified at the undergraduate level, followed by your certification, I should say, and then you went on to earn a master's degree. And I know you worked partly with the Atlanta Falcons, or you worked with the Atlanta Falcons as part of your experience in athletic training. And let me ask this. Throughout the years, things have changed, things have been modified and so forth. What's the newest thing that kind of has made some impact in the world of sports medicine and taking care of athletes' injuries?
The largest thing we've seen is the introduction of a new modality called dry needling. It is the best way to describe it. It's very similar to acupuncture, but it's very different. I say similar because we're using the same needles. We just don't follow the meridian lines. We're not trying to center somebody's chi.
Yeah,
we're literally focusing on releasing a muscle spasm. And honestly, my majority of my staff who are certified, that is literally the most direct modality we have. So a lot of people are going directly to that, and it has such great results that we don't really do much anything else anymore because we can get through so quickly because of that. And that has been huge, primarily from a professional standpoint, because prior to this past year, athletic trainers were not given the ability from a licensure standpoint to practice dry needling. So that has become, as it grows as a modality across the profession, you'll see different states kind of include that in their licensure and allowing the athletic trainers to practice.
So do you guys practice it at Wingate University?
Absolutely.
But to do that, you have to be certified. You have to go through some certification process. Have you gone through this certification process out of curiosity?
I have. I've been a pincushion, yes.
and you are a believer in this modality. Like you've seen the results that it can give, and you're on board with this.
100%.
Interesting.
It's just it's crazy. When those problem areas come where you can't get that release that you need.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you put a little needle in there, and all of a sudden it's the muscle just like, all right, I give. And so all of a sudden what was nagging now is like, oh, I'm loose. I don't have pain anymore. It's like, it's as simple as that.
Man, I might come to you, brother, the next time my back tightens up, because
absolutely,
that is the real deal. It started to happen to me a couple weeks ago, and I know that it happens to so many people, and it's just debilitating. And so glad to know that you guys got those needles. One more thing about that, but first, folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. This is also a co-production of Radio Maria. Certified athletic trainer Tim Singleton is joining us today for a conversation on what he does, some of the new modalities within the world of athletic training and so forth. Tim, continuing the conversation about dry needling, one thing I found interesting was a couple years ago, the American Medical Association fully recognized acupuncture as a legitimate form of medicine, whereas that same, I think, meeting, they rejected chiropractic as a legitimate form. And not that it isn't, it's just the American Medical Association didn't recognize it. And I guess that alone shows why athletic trainers all over the country, probably all over the world, have got certified in dry needling and use it as a part of rehab.
Right.
Interesting.
It's interesting because, that's usually where you would see acupuncture would be like a more of a holistic approach to medicine, and such as chiropractic. So, it's come out of a need, but it's been around for a long time. I mean, you think of trigger point injections, that's kind of what it's taken over. And so that's where you see the most benefits. And we used to send them to our orthopedic to do that a lot. And we had great benefit, but now we don't have to. And so that's kind of where, it speeds up the process for us.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Who doesn't want to hear that, right? We always want to hear of a better new pill. We always want to hear of a better, but in particular, this is something that's not going to have any side effects, correct?
Correct.
Interesting. Yeah, something
done properly.
yeah, absolutely. So that people crochet with, don't put that size needle in. Exactly. These things are really tiny, right?
Yes, they are.
All right, very good. So let's switch gears a little bit. The Super Bowl was played a couple weeks ago, and one of the participants in that Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, he had surgery, I think it was a couple days after the Super Bowl, and he had surgery on what is called turf toe. And I think a lot of football fans, they hear this term. First of all, tell us what this is and why would you need surgery for turf toe?
Number one, turf toe is a rough injury and it's something you think, oh, it's just your big toe, why can't you play? I would assume, I'm not saying this for sure, but I would assume that he was given either a Toradol shot prior to the game to numb it up.
Yep.
I mean, it ended Deion Sanders' career, right?
Yeah.
So what the injury is, if you take your big toe and pull it back towards you, that tendon is what we call the extensor tendon. It gets pinched.
Yep.
And if you think of, okay, I have a hyper toe, think of defensive backs who backpedal all the time,
Yeah.
and that tendon just keeps getting irritated over and over and over again. So
That's right.
that it just gets it flames up, it gets inflamed, and it stays irritated the entire season. So he must have done something throughout the course of the season. Who knows what it could be, a repetition of maybe how he takes his drop or multiple different things. And so going into that game, obviously you're not going to miss it for the turf toe. You're not going to miss the game, but on the back end, that's where you take care of everything that's been nailing you for the season. So you probably went in there and had probably a cleanup procedure. I would assume, unless X-rays or MRI showed loose bodies, just go in there and take it out, clean up the sheath that surrounds the tendon to promote the healing process, so that he won't have to deal with it anymore.
So after this type of surgery, it's likely he'll never have to deal with that again.
Not really. I mean, there's a good chance he could. It's just, again, fixing the problem, because, again, you never know unless they broke it down and say, hey, here's your cause, then they can figure out a way to either change the way he runs, takes his drop or whatever it may be. He could irritate that tendon again. It's not a foolproof plan, but it definitely alleviates what he's struggling with now.
That's interesting. You mentioned defensive backs that have to back up. Of course, that's what just about every quarterback does on every play. Even if they hand the ball off, sometimes they take a couple steps back, and certainly on pass plays they take steps back, and that's what really aggravates that. That's good stuff. Folks, this is Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I'm talking with a master's degree holder in athletic training. He's a certified athletic trainer. He's the head of sports medicine at Wingate University. Thank you for joining us today on Carolina Catholic Radio, a co-production of Radio Maria. Tim, I'm going to switch gears again, but of course keeping in line with this discussion on athletic training. The motivation plays what type? Let me leave it up to you. What type of role does motivation play when you're dealing with athletes, when you're dealing with anybody that's trying to get better?
Oh man, it's a massive player. It's interesting when you don't have clinically we don't do a lot of studies on this. It'd be interesting. There are studies out there in sports medicine and orthopedic surgeries and stuff like that in regards to motivation, but to compare the athlete who has experienced, let's say an ACL, it's a big topic. Let's say an athlete who's already experienced an ACL injury and surgery and has come back, and they tear it again.
Yep.
The motivation for that person is entirely different than the person who's torn it for the first time.
Better or worse?
It's better, simply for the fact that they know what to expect, they know how to get back, they know they can get back.
Yep.
And so the motivation is like, all right, I got this.
Yeah.
And the first time you do it, you're like, or the first injury that they've ever experienced, you're like, I don't know how to handle myself. I don't know what my body's going to do in response. Do I trust the person who's working on me? There's all these factors that kind of throw into their mentality of it. But when we ever truly sit down with somebody from a rehab perspective, and it happens all the time when we're looking at 9 to 12 months of rehab.
Jeez.
I have to sit down and have a heart-to-heart. You got to get your mind right. You have to approach this and attack rehab. You can't just come in here and expect things to happen. You've got to work at it. And if you're not going to work at it, I'm not going to sacrifice my time to work with you.
Interesting.
It's funny, once it's whatever flips in their mind and they start attacking it and they start being very proactive and addressing rehab and that approach, their body follows suit. And you start seeing those gains that the athlete wants to see, and they don't necessarily see all immediately. And that also plays into just kind of the generation we live in. Is like everything's instant gratification. They assume that, hey, I had ACL surgery. I keep using that as an example because it's easy. They expect, 3 months I'm playing. No, not at all. There's a process that we want to make sure you don't do this again.
Yep.
There's a lot of factors that play into that you don't know about. I do. So let me just guide you in this and trust me towards the end. And so once that mindset changes, the process becomes more enjoyable for me as a clinician, because then rehab becomes fun because they're wanting to work, they want to see the changes, they can buy in, they're willing to try the hard things, they're not scared, And so motivation is extremely necessary, and it's very important in the rehab process.
And we could leave with this. Perhaps it's just a one-word response, but what you would greatly suggest, because a lot of our listeners are past their playing days, and they might be at the tail end of their life. I know a lot of our listeners are, and they're undergoing surgery, or they're undergoing some type of rehab because of some condition that they have. And I think you mentioned this word a couple times. Your number one suggestion to somebody under the care of an athletic trainer or under the care of, say, a physical therapist would be trust your therapist and do as they say and keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Listen, I know you got a meeting to go to. Thank you. You're always great on the show. I always thank you because you always say yes to coming on the show. Thank you for all you do for our students there and what you do for our community, buddy. And you take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. Tim Singleton, folks. He's a certified athletic trainer, the director of sports medicine at Wingate University. Boy, he's spot on. I thought, he definitely knows what he's talking about. He's worked literally at the professional level and all kinds of levels at the all different levels of college, Division I, Division II, and so forth. He's a former college football player himself, so he gets it. He not only gets the training, but he understands the rehab. And you could just tell from his voice and his responses that dude knows what he's talking about. All right, listen, we got a couple more minutes left. We got the quick Q&A with Dr. A. And then, of course, right after that, we have something that's called a crazy stat or just COVID.
Yeah.
So go ahead, brother, with your first question.
Why did Major League player Fernando Tatis make the news this past week with $340 million a year for 24 months? Lens, the question, is it a moral issue, and why do we have to pay for it?
That's a big question. Yeah, Fernando Tatis, he's the shortstop. He's a young guy for the San Diego Padres. There's so many issues here, but yeah, he signed a $340 million deal. It's for 14 years, I think, which doesn't make him the highest paid player, but it makes him certainly one of the highest paid players. I think he's going to make around $24 million a year. And I think it's worth discussing it for this from this standpoint. People have asked on this show before. I've had conversations outside of the show where people say it's a moral issue. In other words, I have a friend of mine, he's a big sports fan, and he said it's literally immoral to take any more than a certain amount of money. And I said, put a number on it. And he said, for instance, $20 million a year. What are you going to do with more than $20 million a year? But if you ask Michael Jordan, he would say, build a clinic in your hometown for the underinsured and uninsured, right? That's something you could do with that money. Now, I think Fernando Tatis would say what most people say, and that is, if they're going to pay it, I'm going to take it, right? Yep. It's pure capitalism. It's on maybe an aspect of unbridled capitalism, but there's two things, and you mentioned them both. Is this a moral issue? Going back to that, I say no, although there's some people that think it is. But certainly, the only thing that would make it a moral issue is if they put that money for the bad, right? Let's say they built a cocaine empire here in the United States with that money. Bad, but if you did something with that to help improve your communities, you help with scholarships at your local school or the school that you went to, the college you went to, whatever the case is, certainly that'd be putting money to good use. Here's the other thing. Don't get too mad about this, people. Whether you are a sports fan or not, it is us who pay this bill. And all you have to do is ask anybody who owns cable. If you like ESPN, for instance, one of the things your cable provider is going to say is, it'll cost you. And why do you think it costs you? Because to get those major colleges to play basketball, to get those major colleges to play football on your network, shoot, ESPN has baseball games throughout the whole week.
Right.
Who do you think pays that bill? But the biggest thing is in your local area, like right now, let's say you wanted the MLB package for the Atlanta Braves. It's not free, brother.
No.
In fact, that rate goes up probably each and every year.
Right.
How do you think Fernando Tatis gets that money? It's primarily from those television contracts.
Right.
That's the big thing. And those guys charge. In other words, they're like, okay, if you want the San Diego Padres daily on your TV, you got to give me a lot of money to do that. The team in turn takes that money and gives it to the player. So if we keep buying it, then keep buying those packages, then that's what's going to happen. is
Right.
that the stats are going to go up, the salaries are going to go up, and it's going to keep getting crazy. Now, Chris, do you remember when you were younger, like maybe when you were a kid, and you heard that people were making like $5 million a year? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I remember when I was in college. This is a true story. Again, this literally shows how long ago it was. Mm-hmm. I remember we were traveling for Shepherd University for a baseball game, and somebody had Sports Illustrated, and they were passing around the bus because we're all trying to pass time. We all have our earbuds in. We're all listening to music or reading something.
Oh, you had earbuds back then?
Well, you know what
Wow.
I mean. I was just trying to relate to people. Headphones is what we would call them.
And Walkman.
Oh, absolutely. That's how I listened to I had cassettes, and that's how I listened to all my music.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you had to bring batteries, my man, because batteries, I tell you, I'm telling you, once the bus got going, Coach wasn't stopping for batteries. And if you had batteries, you could charge everybody $15 a battery. Somebody's like, anybody got any batteries? I was like, $20 a piece right over here at the Acquaviva 7-Eleven. Anyway, I remember on the front page of Sports Illustrated, it listed in small print all the players making more than $1 million. Like, this is astounding, everybody. Look at how, and it was something like 24 people. Now, again, this is in the late 1980s. Now, shoot, there's some people that make $1 million a week or close to it, brother. I'm just telling you. Anyway, so to answer that question, why is this such a newsworthy thing? It's one of the biggest contracts in the history of sport. Now, I'm going to leave it with this. That dude's good, and he deserves a lot of money because he's one of the best players in Major League Baseball. But 14 years from now, they're going to still paying him a lot of money, and that dude might be sitting on his front porch. In other words, is he going to be healthy enough to play that long? And some of that money, and most of that money's guaranteed. And I'm like, why are you guaranteeing this money? Crazy. All right, brother. Thanks for that question. So listen, I mentioned earlier, right at the beginning of the show, a crazy stat or just COVID.
Yeah.
And here it is. In the beginning of the year, I went back and I looked. No, in fact, from the beginning of the year, I went back and looked this past weekend, the top 25 preseason for NCAA basketball. And the following teams were in it. And to no doubt, right? UNC, Chapel Hill was in it. Duke was in it. And Michigan State University. They're all in the top 20, right? They're in the top 25, but all three of those teams were in the top 20. Guess what, brother?
What?
None of those teams are in the top 25. And here's the corker. UNC's in doubt. They're a bubble team. They may or may not make the NCAA tournament. Duke, I doubt it. And Michigan State University, some people picked them to win the national title. They're not even going to be in it.
Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. So that
Better
goes
chance for the Wolfpack.
No, they're going to make it for sure. So there you go. A crazy stat, or is that COVID? And what I mean by that is think of all the crazy stuff that happened. LSU, this past football season, they were awful. They were like a 500 team. And just last year, they not only won the national title, some people thought they had the best season of any college football team ever.
Yeah.
Well, listen, folks, before
you know what the coach would say, we didn't play our best, but we got to come back and do it again next season and play some real football.
It was just COVID. I ate too much jambalaya, and it was that COVID thing.
We couldn't get rid of the COVID.
Listen, folks, we have just 1 minute left. But again, I want to give thanks to author Jeff Ballister. He wrote the book, God Doesn't Play His Zone Defense. Check more about this book and author Jeff at goddoesn'tplayhiszonedefense.com. Jeff has agreed to be the sponsor of this show. I'm going to thank him and wish his project well. Get this book, folks. It was a stocking stuffer at Christmas, but you can stuff it in somebody's Easter basket.
That's right.
Chris, don't you agree? This would easily fit. So again, goddoesn'tplayhiszonedefense.com to find out more about that. All right, folks. Before we go, each time I like to give a quote by a pope. And again, this one comes from Pope John Paul II, in which he said about sport, give thanks to God for the gift of sport in which the human person exercises his body, intellect, and will, recognizing these abilities as so many gifts of his creator. Before we go, folks, a special thank you to Carlos Herrera and athletic trainer Tim Singleton for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here at Carolina Catholic Radio and Radio Maria for more Faith in Sport.
You've been listening to Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, 1270 AM Charlotte. Also, Radio Maria. We want to thank all of our Radio Maria listeners for tuning in today, and also our Carolina Catholic Radio Network listeners for tuning in to Carolina Catholic Radio 1270 AM Charlotte. Also, streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And if you can't get enough Faith and Sport, check out carolinacatholicradio.org and Faith and Sport on Demand. We'll meet you back here next week for more Faith and Sport. Have a blessed week and a great one, everybody.
Catch the Spirit, learn, love, and live your faith. AM 1270, Catholic Radio, WCGC Belmont, where Charlotte grows in Christ. Flagship station of the Carolina Catholic Radio Network.